Hi, welcome to SBR.TV. I'm Peter Loshaks. We're going to talk about Week 6 in college football right now. Last week was Week 5, the first week that we enjoyed the guidance of SBR moderator Justin Seven's stat model for college football, and he gave us 3 picks from it, which all won, so I'm very happy about that. Of course, Justin Seven is with us again this week to try to keep it going. Justin, thanks for being here again. I guess there was never a doubt in your mind that all 3 would win?
Well, I wasn't surprised, but I was always happy. I expect to hit close to 60% long term. Going 3-0 on those 3 picks doesn't surprise me. I did lose Hawaii, which was another computer pick, but we didn't talk about that on the show.
Well, good job. Everyone was a winner last week on our show, so let's get into the games for this week. Here we go. Okay, the first game that I wanted to ask you about, and this is actually one of the games where I'm very interested to see what your stat model actually does have to say. It's Georgia Tech and Florida State, and the reason I'm so interested in this game is Florida State has been a really hard team to pin down this year. They've been all over the map, mostly looking pretty bad, except, of course, for their big blowout win over BYU on the road. Now they're having sort of internal political problems with rumors that Coach Bobby Bowden might be possibly stepping down. It seems like they have a lot of talent, but they also look very undisciplined. Georgia Tech is looking very good. So what do you think of this game? Florida State at -2.5. I personally like the over 54.5 here.
I definitely lean on the over in this game. This is a hard game to evaluate because Florida State has been inconsistent. One week they look great, another week they look like chumps. But even with, now we have more data points, when they're all scattered all over the place, I can say, yes, it's the average, but the volatility is so big, it makes it much harder to say how good that play is. If I were forced to bet on this game, I'd take Georgia Tech and the over. But I'm not actually betting that. All
right, and then there's 2 small home dogs that I'm thinking about. One that I like a bit more than the other, but both for similar reasons. You see this kind of situation a lot of times at this time of year. A team will maybe beat a few bad teams, maybe beat a good team, can get a lucky win or something, and then all of a sudden a team that was expected to be mediocre is suddenly 5-0 or 6-0, and they're ranked and find themselves a road fave against another decent program. So we have 2 home dogs that are sort of in this situation this week, Missouri and Arkansas. Both of them are about +3 and about +130 on the money line. So let's start with Nebraska and Missouri. Nebraska had a big home loss to Missouri last year, so people who use revenge as a factor will take note of that. Nebraska has played very well so far this year. They're ranked number 3 nationally in scoring defense. They're giving up 7 points a game, and number 23 in total defense at 285 yards. The Nebraska line also did move early from up from -1 to -3. So what's your take on this game? What do you think of Missouri as a home dog here?
My computer makes Nebraska a 3.5-point favorite, so I'm going to pass on this game. Nebraska is a tough team to get a grip on, though, because they've had such, for the most part, a cream puff schedule. Their 3 wins were against Florida Atlantic, Arkansas State, and Lala, whose combined record is 3-9. If you look at their strength of schedule using Sagarin ratings, they have the 84th most difficult schedule, meaning almost everyone had an easier schedule this year. They played Va-Tech and lost, of course. But I'm not impressed by their defensive stat of 7 points a game. But I'm not impressed by Miz either. So I make Nebraska a 3.5-point favorite, and I pass on this game.
All right, interesting. Well, I'm on the Missouri money line, and I think I'm going to stick with it. And then Auburn and Arkansas. What about that? That's sort of this very similar game. Auburn is a lot like what I was describing before. They were expected to be a little mediocre this year, but they've jumped out to a 5-0 start, sort of a surprise. And now they're ranked and have a bunch of buzz about them. But I'm not sure that they should be a road fave here. What do you think? Arkansas, they've had sort of 2 tough losses against good teams, but in their last game they routed Texas A&M on the road and really came alive in the second half. And that seems like it might have lit a fire under them to me. Auburn's played well, but I'm just not sure this line is justified. Auburn's D, I'm actually thinking you might say, I'm predicting you're going to say, knowing how you analyze things, that you might say that Auburn's D is in for a bit of a fall since they have given up a lot of yards, and they've also gotten 13 takeaways so far, which I know you consider to be representative of being kind of lucky. So what's your take on this one?
Okay, turnovers work differently in college football than they do in NFL. If you look at the relationship between turnovers and how good a team is, there is a stronger relationship in college than there is in NFL. That is, in NFL, it's almost all chance. In college, it's some chance, but it's not all chance. In this matchup, I made Auburn a 3.5-point favorite also. So I'm not really interested. I'm looking for games that are just horrendously lined, like somebody's asleep at the wheel, they just don't realize it type. And neither of these games were of that type.
All right, interesting. Then there's a couple of team totals, actually, that I was looking at, and I want to get your opinion on that. We haven't talked much about team totals yet in any of our spots, and team totals do tend to come out very, very late in college football, a lot of times game day, but these are still two that I'm thinking about, and of course I'm guessing what the team totals will be based on the current spread and game total. The first one I'm thinking about is the over on Texas, which should be around 46, and then the other one is under on Air Force playing TCU, which should be around 16. I like these because, when TCU's D is on, they really just do hold subpar offenses down. 3 out of their 4 games this year, they've held the other team to under 16, and Air Force, needless to say, they've got a pretty feeble offense. They haven't scored on an offensive touchdown in 2 games. And then with Texas off of a bye week, and of course they can really put the points on the board. Colorado's D has gotten routed on the road this year, and this game has a huge spread, so it seems a little coin flippy to bet the spread. Same thing with a very high game total, and Colorado might just disappear on offense, but I feel pretty confident that Texas is going to put up a lot of points here. So I think my favorite play out of all of them is Texas team total, is the over, Texas team total. What do you think of these two?
If you like Texas, you like the over. If you like both of those and you can't do a correlated parlay, doing Texas minus, a team total on Texas over is good. I don't have a real strong opinion on either one of these plays though.
No strong opinion. Okay, but you ran your numbers for them, right?
I did. Let's see. I did not run numbers for projected team points in that particular matchup. I just used the market spreads since I didn't have a strong opinion on either game. So
okay, well, I am thinking about those. Then another game that I wanted to ask about, which is actually a pretty interesting game, is Michigan-Iowa. This is interesting to me. Michigan is looking pretty vulnerable. Iowa is looking pretty solid, but not quite a blowout team. I know you hate teasing college games, but what about teasing Iowa here? This line, I think it's moved in Iowa's favor. It opened at about 7.5, I think, and now it's about 8. So the market is kind of liking Iowa, but you can still tease across a 7 and the 3. I know you've told me that in certain instances, for certain reasons, you do use college teams in teasers. So this might be one of those situations?
Well, yes, I think it is. And if you want to hear do you want to hear why? Normally, if you're playing good odds teasers, the break even is 70.7. Now you're going to lose on the 1 and half of the 2. So that raises the break even on this moneyline parlay up, from 70.7 to about 74%. So you got to say, am I getting? Basically you're laying 286 on the money line for this team because of that. And if you look on what you get at Matchbook, if you can scalp out a plus 290, it's not a perfect scalp because you can get reverse middled, which is like a bad wedgie. But there's equity on both sides. So if you give me something that has 0 equity or even a tiny bit of equity, which I think you have here, you throw it in with all your NFL teasers, and now you can get a lot more down.
Okay, and then the last game I want to ask you about, it's the biggest game of the week. I'm interested to see how it turns out and what your numbers say. There's no way I'm going to touch it myself, but let's see what you have to say. Florida at LSU, of course. LSU has come way down from opening around 11 to around 8 now. Everyone knows the factors involved here. Tim Tebow for Florida had a concussion, might be still affected by it. LSU is 5-0, but they've struggled to win a lot of those games. What's your take on Florida LSU?
This goes back to the last question you asked. I lean towards Florida, but not strong enough to play it. This game, like the last one, it's an 8-point favorite. Again, you can tease this one down to 2 also. Now, most of the time, teasing a road favorite in college is horrendous, except that I lean towards Florida. So if I have a lean, I have a pretty close to a break-even teaser, I'm going to throw this one in. I'm going to mix it in with your Iowa teasers and all the NFL teasers I can, and now instead of having 4 teams, I might have 6, and I can get down a ton more.
Right, and that's the thing about teasers. There's like 2 ways you can use them. You can use them blindly with good odds and good subsets, but you can also combine them with any other kinds of edges that you might have in various ways, from handicapping or otherwise. That's kind of a way I like to use them a lot. All right, so are there any other top 25 or otherwise plays that you're liking this week that you can share with us from your model?
The only computer play I have this week is Idaho +4, and I think there's still a 4 at the Greek right now.
All right, well, that's that. To recap, I'm kind of liking quite a few plays this week. My favorites by far are Missouri and Arkansas on the money line, both around +130, although Arkansas, I think, has gone down a bit, and Missouri has gone up a bit from that. Then I'm liking Georgia Tech, Florida State, over 54.5, just a little. And then I'm thinking about a tease on Iowa, Texas team total over, and Air Force team total under. And Justin Seven's model says take Idaho at +4. So that's it. If you're watching an SBR.TV vid for the first time, why don't you come on over to SBRforum.com and join us in further discussions about all this and more. For SBR.TV, I'm Peter Loshak.